Sounds good.
All right, let's get after it. How are you today, Dorcy?
I'm doing great today, Chris. Thank you for
So,
asking.
yeah, so give me the 200 words on who you are and what you do and
All
why we're
right.
talking.
Okay, so I'm Dorcy Pruter. I'm the CEO and founder of the Conscious Co-Parenting Institute, and that's a company where we do a deep dive in healing intergenerational or transgenerational trauma in mostly high conflict divorce families. And then I also recently started Soul Illumination Healing about 5 years ago, where I do deeper healing with regards to things that are manifesting in our everyday life, and we're really unaware of like where these things are coming from, if you will. So at Soul Illumination, we do deeper healing work where we dive to the core of where people are stuck and really help them shift how they're showing up in their life and in their relationships.
So what does your typical client look like? Why do they find you?
Yeah, so it's a great question. At Conscious Co-Parenting Institute, my typical client is a alienated parent, so a parent who's gone through a high conflict divorce and they're experiencing an emotional cutoff between them and one or all of their children. So
Wow.
they're experiencing a level of like hatred, if you will, hatred from their child, where their child is or children are rejecting them. And then at Soul Illumination, we are really dealing with or working with people that are high performance people, people that have successfully run businesses, bought and sold businesses, done all of those things. And they've really come to this realization that they've maybe are overachieving at a lot of things, but realize that there's something more. So at
Mm,
Soul Illumination, we do deeper work. Yeah. And really
mm.
not having to do more, really getting into the space of being who they authentically.
Yeah, I'll have to be careful because I check a lot of those boxes.
Check all the
Uh,
boxes. Okay,
yeah,
both sides. Okay, we might have to find a happy medium for you.
yeah. So no, I'm not divorced.
You're not
Uh,
divorced.
not
Okay.
not happily or unhappily divorced, no. But the high achiever stuff, I get some of those. The
Yeah.
So Dorsey, I what we set this up in a hurry. I just reached out yesterday, and the
Yeah.
reason was that you just pounced on this. I sent out this request and you just pounced on it. So
Yeah.
obviously it resonated with something in your soul.
It really did.
What happened there? Walk me through that moment of here's this knucklehead with a running podcast and I'm gonna reach out to him and write a lovely letter.
That's so funny. Thank you for asking that. And thank you for being aware that I did pounce on it. It's funny because I was a runner as a kid. And so the running piece was like, oh, that's interesting. I could probably talk about something like that. And then what really resonated with me was the subject matter that you had requested, which was about hate and why is this so predominant in our society right now and what's going on. And so for me, I grew up in the aftermath of family trauma, and my like a lot of alienated kids or kids that are dealing with trauma, it really creates this like deep rupture in our identity. And so without the tools to make sense of like what's going on or what the pain is, um, kids really cope through performance or through achievement and through trying to control their body when the heart feels completely out of control. And so when you posted, it just really struck a nerve with me. Like what it was almost like a download, if you will, an energetic download. It was like, wow, not only is this like connected, it was interesting about the running and a lot of kids that we work with at Conscious Co-Parenting Institute to reunite them with their parents, they are all a lot of them are really high achievers and high performers and endurance athletes and runners, oddly enough. And so hate actually becomes that part of performance where we get a lot of praise and we get a lot of reinforcement, like you're strong and you don't need them. And the truth is that's just our trauma branding, or it's good branding for trauma. And so that's why I pounced on it. So many kids, I think, become these endurance athletes, not because they love to run per se, but
Yeah.
because the running that it comes from that emotional rupture where they really aren't able to allow or able to name it, if you will. Does that make
Sure,
sense?
it's
Yeah.
filling a hole. You know, we see the same thing with a lot of the ultra runners. They're all ex-addicts or ex something, right?
Yeah.
And this is just filling a hole, right?
Yeah.
In their life. You can argue whether it's positive or negative, but we do see that a lot, right? Where it's a
Yeah.
coping mechanism versus something
Completely.
else. Yeah. But you know, what I was trying to frame the question as and I'm one of those people who doesn't like to ask questions unless they already have a pretty good idea what the answer is. And I don't really have an idea what the answer is here. But
Got
I
it.
sense in my world, in our world, that
Yeah.
there is just all this fear and anxiety and hate. Some people are isolated, some people are disconnecting. And
Yep.
then what really struck me a couple of weeks ago, one is I was waking up in the middle of the night, worried about things that I have no control over, right?
Ah,
I go,
yes.
something's going on here, right?
Ah,
And I also noticed that because of my background in business, there's a famous business book called Influence,
oh, it's a
and
great
it
book.
and it and it goes, yeah, you've read it.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a
So
great book.
it tells you, it basically explains you as a consumer, you have no control over your decisions, basically. The
Right.
marketers know how to trick your triggers and make you do things,
Your
right?
emotional triggers. They know
Right.
the wiring.
And I realize that's kind of what's going on right now in society, isn't it? But the
It really
trigger is hate. It's fear and
is
hate.
fear.
And that hate starts to get addictive. You
Right.
get, so it used to be on the social media. I'm dumping a lot of stuff on you. Used to be on social media, you know, you'd see a puppy video and you get that
Right.
endorphin hit.
Yeah.
Now it's I see hate and I get the
Yes.
endorphin hit. And like you, and so tell me, what's the mechanism there? What
It's
help me sort this out?
Yeah, so it's really neurobiology, if you will. So I'll break it down like what's happening when people are addicted to hate. So hate activates in the body actually the reward loop, oddly enough. So we get this surge of dopamine and cortisol, and then the brain thinks that you've done something powerful, even when the behavior is destructive. So actually, it could be the opposite of what's happening, but the chemical reaction in the body is the same. And so the twist is it's not about the chemistry, even that, it's about the nervous system, which is wired for the emotional state of your identity. So if you were raised in chaos, let's say, or if you experience early betrayal or family dynamics that are tough, your body learns that conflict equals connection. And so that fight equals focus. And it's like the grooves that are etched in the nervous system or a record, right? It's like the nerve, it's
Yeah,
just
yeah,
round and round,
right.
round, and it keeps going around. And so it doesn't matter if it's even hurting you or if you have no control over it. It actually just feels familiar. And that's why so many people defend their anger and their hatred because without it, they don't know who they are. And so hate is just like, it's just a feeling and it's a false form of connection. And so for a lot of people, it's the only form of connection that they've ever known. It's why you see like the disruption and the destruction of other people's property and think they feel righteous in doing that, even though their rational mind would say this is ridiculous, right? But it's fueled by something they're not even cognizantly aware of. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. So part of
Yeah.
it, because I don't think it's all of it, but part of it is it's a habit loop with a
Yes.
reward system.
Right.
But I think the tricky bit there is the way it, you know, it starts out maybe as fear or
Yeah.
unease or disconnection, and it
Yeah.
escalates to hate
Yes.
through an amplification process.
The adrenaline. It's like a chemical cocktail. So it's like they get a dopamine, then cortisol, and then you throw in adrenaline on top of that, and then you have the perfect neurobiological cocktail to create the chaos. And that's what's familiar. And it's like any addiction, the body craves it. So it becomes the shortcut to power, if you will, and to certainty. So especially if someone feels powerless in other areas of their life. So, what's more is that the brain is a pattern seeking machine. So our brain, it doesn't care if something is healthy, it just wants familiarity. So if chaos or conflict were early emotional templates, then we seek those things. The brain will keep steering us back to those similar states because it's what we know. And so until somebody evolves out of that and heals it. Yeah.
Yeah, and so this this is it's an escalation process through the reward loop,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
And the way you get pushed into that habit loop is someone makes you feel uneasy.
That's right.
And then you seek out comfort
Yes.
and you find that there are, you know, good ways to seek comfort and bad ways to seek comfort.
Exactly.
But it's also going back to influence, right? The book Influence.
Yeah.
It also has a peer reinforcement
Bingo.
aspect.
Yes. It's the gang effect, right? The skaggle of kids that all get together and you have a bunch of good kids and maybe one kid who's more influential than the other and they start doing things and it's the mirroring neurons in our brain and emotions are contagious. So it's the excitement of it and everybody gets all caught up in it. And yeah, so it is the power of influence. And I do family reunification, and I always tell the kids during a workshop, I'm like, there are three ways. Dr. Cialdini talks about this, that we are influenced or we influence, and we're either bunglers, smugglers, or sleuths. And bunglers are people who influence other people and they're unconscious and where they win. And a smuggler influences other people, they're conscious about it and they win. And a sleuth is somebody who influences other people where everyone wins. So when I'm recovering kids that are dealing with this kind of like trauma and helping them rewire the neural pathways in their brain, I always ask them, which one are you? Because we all influence and we're all influenced. And the more conscious we are, the more aware we are of it. So I always tell them I like to be Nancy Drew. Most of the time they look at me like, who's that? So,
Yeah, but that's great. You and I are on the same wavelength with the
yeah,
Dr. Chiadar. I
Cialdini,
yeah, I can
Dr.
never pronounce
Cialdini.
his last name.
I
But
know. It
that
might be Cialdini, but I'm pretty sure it's Cialdini, but I'm not exactly sure. But
yeah,
yeah.
it's a small book and
Yep.
it's not like wonderfully easy to read, but
Yeah.
it is like the Bible for how to make people buy things.
Yes.
But the things that are described in there, the methodologies,
Yeah.
it could be make people do things versus, anything, right? But yeah,
Absolutely.
that being with a bunch of peers who are all echoing the same thing gets you into
Yeah.
that echo chamber effect that
Yeah.
everybody talks about. And that's like pouring gas on the fire. That makes the amplification loop go faster and faster and faster. And
Yes.
now, before you were a rational person, now you're a conspiracy theorist, right? I
Totally.
mean, and
Or
really,
or
really angry about it.
doing other or yeah, conspiracy theorist or an anarchist and damaging people's property and protesting and burning things like it becomes the mob mentality, and it's not just like in the mind, it becomes so like a felt sense and experience in the body too. So even unresolved trauma or unprocessed betrayal, all that lives in our body. So it over time, the nervous system gets wired to expect and even seek out that chaos and seek out experiences that feed the addiction of the hate or the anger, right? Which is just really what's below the surface is unresolved, some type of unresolved trauma. It just quietly lives in the body. And it doesn't have to be a macro, it could be a micro trauma. And a micro trauma can be something like for an overachiever, for example, like a parent who, is really driving their child to be the best football player, the best runner or whatever. And so there's the over expectations of kids from parents, and a child will wire that in even if it's a good intention as I'm not good enough, right? So
Yeah.
that would be maybe a micro, but it becomes a macro when they grow up, and then this is how they live it out in their life.
But I think that this current state of fear that everyone's in
Yeah,
has very little to do with an ex pre-existing pathology
you don't
because
think so?
you and we're intelligent people, right?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
we're well-educated people,
Yeah.
but we're still impacted by this stuff.
Yes.
So, and I see people who I respect, who I've
Yeah.
had relationships with. I'm like, wow, they're off the rails. How did we get here?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to disagree with you. I think it actually has to do with the wiring from their past that they're unconscious of. It hardens into our identity. And when we are children, we are completely influenced by our parents first, and especially in the first few years of life. And then we create our narrative about who we are and how we show up, good, bad, or indifferent. And we live our life that way for the rest of our life until we wake up. So we're always bringing things in. Most people manifest those things unconsciously. And then when it comes into their consciousness, they fight against it because it's become part of their identity. Like, I'm
Yeah,
supposed to be angry. So, rational, educated, normal people, when they're triggered in whatever it is that triggers that trauma, their belief system, it triggers that behavior that's completely irrational, and it's not, it's like left and right, and there's like no, we can't see the connection in between. But when we look below the surface, we can see that there are these things that drive behavior, and they get hardened into our identity when we're young. Yeah.
sure. But at the end of this process, what you have is someone whose system's been tweaked to the point that they're incredibly sensitive
Yeah.
to some minor triggering, right?
Yeah.
The distance between, rational person and irrational hater has become a heartbeat for that system, right? So the
Yeah.
system has been trained,
Yeah.
and it, it sounds like there's somebody pulling switches somewhere to make all this happen, right? Again, going back to influence, but
Yeah.
okay, we're there. How do we get out of that?
Yeah, that's a
How
great
do we
question.
how do we rationally, as intelligent, rational people go, wait a second, I'm caught in a hate loop and I'm
Mhm.
enjoying it.
And I like it.
Yeah,
Like it feels good, right? Because
yeah,
it's because it has become part of their identity. It's like hate is like their love language, oddly enough, right? It's like it's like such a fine line that it has become their love language. And really the first step towards, I believe, healing this is we have to start unwinding those patterns, right? And we have to go to the core and regulate our nervous system, because no healing happens when somebody's dysregulated. The more that we regulate our nervous system, the more we become emotionally sober. And that means we create a space between the trigger and the reaction. So it's the ability to feel the emotion without being hijacked by them. So most people will feel, they'll have a thought, and then it creates the feeling, and then we feel the emotion. The feeling is the felt sense of the emotion in the body, or the emotion is the felt sense of the feeling in the body, but we haven't connected it. And so we get the trigger, we have the thought that triggers the feeling, and then the emotion is what's happening in our body, and we get dysregulated. So the more we can bring ourselves into a regulated state, then we have the ability to feel the emotion without reacting or acting on it. And this is the embodiment of the work that I do. And I always say to people when they're feeling triggered, especially kids, when we're starting to reunite them with the parent that they supposedly hate, but really what's underneath the surface is unprocessed grief. They're grieving the loss of a parent that they love that's still alive, and they can't connect with them. And so I always love the question when I'm working with people that are dealing with this deep-seated hate is, who am I without the fight? And the question actually
Mm,
unlocks everything. It's like, it's the start of the identity reclamation, if you will.
mm,
And that's really a lot of the work that we do, which is like bringing yourself back to the sacred return of you. Like, who are you and who are you without the fight? Who are you without the hate? And, or who am I if I'm no longer choosing chaos as my compass? And that's really this, what we're seeing now is so much chaos. And it's like, if you take yourself out of that, and it starts with regulating your physical body, regulating your emotional, um, your nervous system, and understanding, creating emotional sobriety. So, and that really stops with you needing the chaos to feel alive. And it kind of circles back to even what your podcast's about, like the endurance and high achievers and stuff. There's that high you get from doing. And when I was a top producer in the mortgage industry for almost 16 years. It was like I got in the mortgage industry when I was in my early 20s, and I was like, I've got to be the best, and I did triathlons. I was like, I've got to be the best. It was like always, I know the cycle. It's like it plays out in every area until you're like, wait a second, what if I don't have that? Then
right,
who am
right.
I?
Who am
Right?
I
So
without this? Yeah,
who am I without
yeah.
this?
And
Yeah.
luckily, there's injury to teach us that lesson.
Yeah, if we don't listen, our body certainly gives
Yeah.
us a little like, listen.
But to sort of summarize what you said in my layman's terms, right? And this is
Yeah,
classic habit loop, right? You got to break
yeah,
the loop.
yeah,
First step, step one, is to recognize it with your big brain, get it
yes,
out of the little brain, out of
yeah.
the dinosaur brain, get it into the big brain and say, oh, look, what's happening?
What's going on?
And
Yeah,
then you can apply the other habit hacks to that say, okay, can I get away from this input that's triggering? Because a lot of times that's what's going on as well, right?
yeah,
It's a constant drumbeat that
yeah.
you can't get away from.
It's an
So if you can
activation.
isolate from that and proactively feed your own loops,
Yes.
whether that's meditation or whatever, right? Just
Meditation, creating that
feeding,
pattern in the
whatever, right? Yeah.
breathing.
Create
Yeah,
new patterns or
yeah,
hijack the existing pattern to be a new pattern. So when I
exactly.
feel this, I'm going to do this instead,
Bingo.
right?
Yeah.
So hijack the power of and this is all Duhigg, right? The Power of
Yeah,
Habits. We've read
totally.
that book too.
Yes.
Yeah.
When you're a top producer, and a high achiever, you've read all the books.
Read all the books. None of it helps. Um, so yeah, this is interesting. This is interesting. So what would be like if you had to lay it out in a 500 word blog post, 5 steps to getting out of your hate loop? What would that blog post, what would the paragraphs in that bullet
Ah,
points be in that?
perfect. The first would be to take a sacred or somatic pause. So breathe in and touch your body. So put your hand on your heart and your hand on your belly and just repeat, I'm safe. I don't have to fight to exist, or, I've got you, I see you, you're safe. And every time you feel triggered, just take those 3 deep conscious breaths. And I always say deep breath in through the nose and all the way into the belly. And
Hmm.
then I would say the second step would be the pattern interrupt. So if you feel the feelings are, the rage is rising up, that you move your body differently, that you shake a little bit, or you walk, or you hum, or you go outside and touch the earth, and you really start the something different that discharges the cycle, the loop. And
Yeah,
then
scratch the record.
scratch the record. Yeah, get out of the grooves. And
So,
then journaling for the identity reset. Who am I without the conflict? Or what would it feel like to be loved without earning it? This is a big one for people. They think they've got to earn things. Who am I without the enemy? Or what would peace feel like in my body today? And like really anchor into that. Again, it's not about like solving the problem. It's about remembering who you are before the pain. And then
Right.
I always say an embodied practice every day. So whether it's embodiment in the morning, like a check-in, grab before you grab your phone, before you even put your feet on the floor, how do I feel today? And let the answer guide your next move. So if you're feeling restless or still a little tired, rest a few more minutes in your bed, right? Really have that conversation. And then
It's the
step
miracle
five.
morning.
Yeah, it's the miracle morning, right? And then I think the last thing would be maybe the daily nervous system check-in, like in the morning and in the evening. Regulate or rate your regulation, right? Are you dysregulated? Are you like spinning off? You can
Mm.
feel it in your body and start to really notice what's going on in your body. I think most people don't even realize what their emotions feel like and when they're dysregulated. They just are busy doing and chaos and all that. So it's like just taking that sacred pause and slowing down.
So
So yeah,
trying to be more mindful, right?
exactly.
And I
Right. So
think I think if I had one ask, I'd ask people to just do that, just to say, how am I feeling right now?
right.
And does it feel right?
Yeah. Where am I feeling it in my body? Like,
Yeah, yeah,
am I feeling anxious?
yeah.
Where do I feel anxiety? Some people are like, oh, nobody's ever asked me that question before. Yeah. So you don't heal by thinking about peace. You don't shift out of the hate mindset. You heal by practicing it. And
Mm,
your body remembers that, and it keeps score. And so you've got to bring it back into the place of remembering
right, right.
that it's
We're
safe.
we're being programmed for
Yes.
anxiety and hate. We
Yes.
need to take control of that and program ourselves for something else.
Right. Right. Being a sovereign soul, I like to say, sovereignty is about being your own leader and being in control of your own life and, leading from a place of love. And most people, there's only two places we jump off from. We take action from fear or love. And we'll bring it full circle here. You were talking about the fear, right? People either take action based on fear or based on love. And some people think that what they're doing is out of love, and this is really where it comes full circle, and it's because they're dysregulated and they have a misunderstanding from their childhood trauma of overachieving, why they have to and earning love, but they don't realize that
Right.
it's
Yeah.
actually not from love, it's from fear. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. They're running. They're running
they're
away from
running.
something. Yeah. Yep. I got it. All right. Before we run out of time and I move you to the exit here, tell us all the links and how people find you and how people engage with you.
Awesome. Yeah, so I'm Dorcy Pruter, DorcyPruter on all social. And also, that's my website, dorseypruter.com. If you're a parent listening to this and you're like, hey, I'm being alienated from my kids, you can find me on Dorcy Pruter. We also have consciouscoparentinginstitute.com. But the easiest way to find me is Dorcy Pruter. You can Google me and I've like show up on the first, I don't know, 100 pages. I'm everywhere. So yeah, that's how you find me.
All right. Great. Hopefully this was helpful. We'll get these recordings up and see if we can help some people to take a
Yeah.
deep breath and get back in line with the world.
Yeah, sounds good.
All
Beautiful.
right.
Thanks for having me on.
Appreciate it. Thank you. All right. Bye.
Bye for now.